point of this video is more or less to incite conversation. I feel like we don't talk enough, so converse with me for a bit.
Step into the lab.
Alright, I guess before I actually start this video, I should explain a little bit, introduce myself. My name is Trent Hall. I am 25 years old. I graduated from Penn State University in 2012 with a degree in sociology. And now I work full-time for the university for a center of public diplomacy called World in Conversation. From Baltimore, Maryland, and grew up early years in Virginia. But many of my teenage memories, even in the summers when I lived in Virginia, were spent in Baltimore. So I can definitely say it's where I grew up. So I guess like the first thing that's on my mind is I want to ask everybody a question. It's definitely a question that's going to challenge people. I think some people are going to instinctively want to accept the challenge. Others maybe not. However, I'm still going to pose it, and hopefully you all will listen to me. I have a challenge on some level for you all. And I guess that challenge is in the form of a question. How often do you seek to understand the other? And to what lengths are you willing to go to fully understand and have clarity in that understanding? I've really been thinking a lot about these events that have been happening. And I say events loosely, or I say events rather on purpose instead of saying protests or riots, because I feel like both of those words have charged language, to be completely honest with you. And it's more so that the events of everything happening recently, specifically within the United States, it's kind of crazy. It's very interesting to me that people still can deny that race is not something that's tension-inducing in our society. What's even more scary to me is the lack of understanding people have or try to have for one another, especially because we have social media. So it's so easy for us to talk to each other. It's so easy for us to connect. Yeah. And instead of sharing, we're shouting at each other. And it's really weird. We choose to use social media in a way that really we demonize people or we idolize them, instead of using it as a tool of empathy, which I think is what we need right now the most. So specifically in Baltimore, being from Baltimore and being away from Baltimore, like proximity-wise, is really weird. Because as everything began to unfold, as everything happened, I actually felt a lot more connected to the mission and the cause of what I felt inside of these events in general. I don't know, man. There's so much on my mind. It's so weird. It's so weird. Like, run it back. Like being away from Baltimore in proximity, but being connected is really weird for me. So proximity-wise, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm at Penn State. I'm working and I'm teaching at Penn State. And I still feel connected to the mission of Baltimore. It's weird. I go back every time and I don't have the same reaction that I usually see people have, which is they get out of Baltimore and they want to leave. They don't want to go back. Actually,
that's me, man. Crazy.
I've actually been feeling a lot of the wave more so to like, I want to fix the things that are wrong with Baltimore. And I think it's really easy, but it can't be done alone. Yeah. Which also was the reason why I wanted to make this video, because I think there's a lot of power in the people and the positive reactions that I have seen after all of the adverse reactions when the protests originally happened. That are just like, I don't know. It's just really weird to me to see people. Oh man, I'm so scatterbrained.
You know, just on the topic of going back to Baltimore, I heard you talk about the sustainable environment thing.
Yeah.
I feel like now, almost more than ever, we're gonna need that because we're gonna have to rebuild our city, man.
Real shit.
Like, it's a mess right now. It's a mess. It's horrible. And if we don't find some way to band together, rebuild our city, you know, the people are gonna further look at us like, oh, they're a bunch of niggas that don't care. So like, what do you propose with that whole sustainable thing?
I feel like it's a very broad leap, and this is something that I want to propose for a very long time. But like, even myself, just proposing this idea, I have no like plan, no blueprint for how it wants to happen. I just know it needs to happen, and now more than ever, just like you said, like really, with everything that happened, I feel like we have the opportunity, and I say we as in everyone, people from Baltimore, people not from Baltimore, in some way, everyone can support like a movement that I think will heal all of us in the end. So I feel like the problem that this stemmed from wasn't necessarily the death of Freddie Gray. The death of Freddie Gray was very, very unfortunate, unwarranted. Any word you want to put on it that's negative, it wasn't deserved. Like, he was treated like an animal. I think that was just the catalyst to something that was already boiling over, which is, in Baltimore, people have nothing really. The people who you saw rioting, the people who are protesting, are the people who are impoverished, the people who are not treated like human beings, the people who are forgotten by society or told that they're nothing to actually be considered as a piece of society. Always demonized. And in turn, the same thing happens with them. And it sucks because both sides, while they're demonizing one another, don't recognize that we're all human beings. Instead of placing these labels on each other to give each other like moral high ground, we could do so much more. We could do so much more. And like with sustainability, I think that right now we have the ability to rebuild. And instead of making people come in and I guess invest completely in us in ways that will not help us, in ways that are going to filter money outside of the community, we could come up with our own resources. It's possible to actually start neighborhood gardens so that people can have the resources that they need and that they won't have to depend on anyone but themselves. And that movement should be to treat each other as actual human beings, as simple as it sounds, as simple as it sounds, to empathize with one another. These are places where education is nothing. Even in my school, which is a county school, education was something that people did not care about because it wasn't good.
So it's almost like a perpetual not caring.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cyclical cycle. Yeah. You have people who don't care enough to invest in a community, and invest in ways of education, invest in ways of property empowerment, anything, not giving people anything. So then they come in with nothing, and they're given nothing, and we're expecting them to produce something. All the while they have no jobs, all the while they're not getting education, as I said before. And that in itself, what do we expect to happen besides people getting frustrated, besides that frustration boiling over, and that boiling over now coming to our face? And now it's like really weird because people who don't care about it, who would never even know that this was an issue, now know that this is an issue. Now know that Baltimore has had such a problem, such an epidemic of poverty, of not caring, of people turning a blind eye. And it's not just government, it's not just institutions. In a way, we have to call for accountability for ourselves as well. We live down the street from these people. Wherever you live at, there is somewhere. And Baltimore just happened to live a little bit closer to it than others. And we can't continue to have a blind eye towards them and expect them to like do something. And it's weird because I'm saying them and simultaneously thinking about ourselves as well. Like my mom is them, my cousin is them, I am them. But you are them.
I feel like that holds like brevity too, because it's like everybody's talking about them, and it's like, yo, that's my cousin, that's my mom, that's my little brother, that's all the kids at church, that's like my grandmother and my uncle, like that's them.
So this is something I wrote my scattered thoughts. What can we do to help us move forward? From the perspective of those most affected to those that feel far or are far removed, one thing for certain is that we need to rebuild. And on many levels, we need people to invest in places that showed signs of deterioration and destruction way before they were physically defiled. Destruction, or rather deterioration, that was made possible by abandoning those who needed us most in society. More than anything, this abandonment comes from a mentality which hinders positive social change, feeds negative narratives that allows us to maintain pseudo separation, which creates an illusion that couldn't be further from reality. We usually condemn others' truths and perspectives without ever seeking to understand. Social media is a means for the world to connect and share ideas, experiences, yet instead of sharing, we end up shouting. Shouting to those that hold the same ideals and similar experiences, affirming our own beliefs, shouting at those who have especially deviant perspectives from our own, affirming our thoughts until that takes up so much room in our mind's eye that we don't have enough room for alternative perspective. No room or desire to seek understanding from those that see things from a lens that we haven't been equipped with. So like those were like mad scattered thoughts. But I feel like in my own weird language, it articulates like what I've been feeling, like the undertone of everything. Moving away from all the facts and everything. I've just seen a lot of crazy ways how human beings stratify one another in unnecessary ways. And the tools of those stratifications can be used to bring us together, for us to empathize with one another. And I guess that's what I really want for us to do. What can we do to help us move forward? Because only we can help us move forward.